let's start by letting you introduce yourself to everyone.
Okay. I'm Heidi Tyner, and I am president of Joseph's Genetic Journey Pays It Forward, which is a nonprofit organization. And we provide feeding tube belts and pads we started for children in our local area, and we have expanded to adults and children across the United States. And we are 100% free. We don't charge for shipping, we don't charge for our products. As long as somebody lives in the United States, they can receive our products.
That's incredible. So I'll ask you the first question that I ask everyone, and that is, what do you think people's first impression of you is?
Uh, Good question. Um, I guess if you see me in person, I'm only 4'10", so I'm I'm quite short, and I'm a little dynamo, I guess.
I love
So short but mighty.
I love it. I love it. And you and I have connected. So tell us where you live.
I live in Michigan.
And I'm here in California. And so we've
Yep.
connected through a mutual friend because we both have a common interest in poker. And we did another story about another nonprofit through someone that I knew who had started a nonprofit for in honor of her daughter, who they lost their battle with pediatric cancer. And
Yep.
so Kitty thought that you and I might like to connect, and that your story would be one that should be shared. So I kind of would like to ask, you said what the foundation is and you said what you guys do. Can you give us a little bit of the backstory and how you got here?
Sure. Um, Starting at birth, my son didn't eat much. We stayed in the hospital extra days until he would eat enough that they would let him go. At 9 months, he stopped growing. He's always had digestive issues, reflux a lot, and reflux meds made him vomit. He's never been a big eater. And so at the age of 3, he was actually so very sick that they did a feeding tube because that was the last avenue. He's been through every possible you can imagine. Um, Anything from spinal taps to biopsies, genetic testing, MRIs, CAT scans, you name it, he's been through it all. The age of 3, he got his first feeding tube. And that helped nutritionally, but he always had like some sort of cap on how much he could tolerate. He's never been able to tolerate a lot. And so at the age of 6, they took the feeding tube out because it wasn't helping him gain weight any longer. Um, it was a choice between eating by mouth or eating by feeding tube. He got the same amount of calories either way, and they wanted him to eat by mouth. So at 6, they took it out. And by the age of 12, he was almost dead again. And they said they had to do something different. So they put in a different type of feeding tube. So he's had actually 3 different types of feeding tubes since the age of 3. Um, and at that point, he was in middle school. And our middle school student council has always done fundraising for things like Pennies for Patients and things like that. And they wanted to do something for somebody they knew. They said, we raise all this money, but we don't know where it goes. We would really like to do something for somebody here in our community. And we had been to the Mayo Clinic and we'd had genetic testing, and they had recommended the next level because they did find something in the genetic test. And our insurance wouldn't cover the next level because they considered it kind of experimental, one of those things. And so student council asked me, because I teach at the school, I'm a middle school teacher. So the kids asked me if it would be okay to do a carnival or to do something to raise money for my son. Um, Eventually, they wore me down and talked me into it. I felt like we were just undeserving, I guess. I don't know. I felt bad accepting charity. Um, And this small little fundraiser turned into a carnival that raised $20,000.
Oh my
$20,000
goodness.
in this small rural community. We are 85% free and reduced lunch here. These kids don't have a lot, but it was huge, huge thing. Our superintendent of the schools was there. Everybody came in. People were donating from all sorts of places because they had heard about it. It had been in the newspaper, and um, it, they raised enough money for him to have the testing. And we were so grateful and so overwhelmed by the community support, the kids support, everything they did. Um, that we wanted to do something in return. And I was talking with my mother in law, who's always made Joseph's belts and pads for him. And I said, I don't have, we didn't have money, but we wanted to do something. And she said, maybe we can like just supply DeVos Children's Hospital because they're the ones who do his surgery and everything. Maybe we can give them some belts and some pads and just do like people around here and supply those things that we can pay that forward. And I said, that's a great idea. Let's go ahead and do that. So we started sewing and we got some more volunteers. Um, by the time we had done that for a year, we'd filled 300 orders and we could no longer, I mean, people were just messaging us and we were writing everything down in a book by hand and sending things out. And we had to finally go electronic in 2016. And we actually became an official 501c3 also in 2016 because word of mouth got out. And as of today, our order form has been filled out over 7,000 times since then. And that doesn't include the hospital orders that we provide because those we just do a whole bunch of and we just send multiples. Anytime I go to the hospital for anything, we deliver a care package to the surgeon's office, to the gastroenterologist's office, to the pediatrician's office. Um, and so, like the hospital orders, we don't even put on the order form, those are just care packages. So, over 7,000 we have sent people to date, and we are 100% volunteer. We don't have anybody, even our board of directors, nobody gets paid. We all have other jobs and other things that we do in life. But we fill a need, and we are so proud and so happy that we can do that.
That's amazing. So the
So, middle
pads,
schoolers,
pardon?
middle schoolers. It all started with middle schoolers wanting
It's
to help their friend.
they say the youth are very inspiring, right?
Very much
Um,
so.
all of the pads and all the belts are given to other people free of charge. You don't charge anyone. Everything
Yes.
operates
Never.
all by donation, I assume, then.
Correct.
Amazing.
Correct. Yep.
So, switching it up just a tad, you talked about all of the struggles that you and your son went through and his journey and all the testing and the genetic test that started all of this that you were raising the money
Right.
for or that the kids were raising the money for. What ended up being the issue for your son? Did they give you a final diagnosis or
He is currently still undiagnosed. He does have a genetic duplication, but he is the only one who has that, and they have no idea if that's the cause. We are part of the unique chromosome network, which is worldwide. And there are two other children in the world who have a similar duplication, but they have other things with it, like a ring chromosome or a deletion of something else. He's the only one with that exact duplication. Um,
wow.
yeah, yeah. And now my son is 19 now. So this started at birth. He's 19 years old now. And he's perfectly capable of telling you everything. There's no developmental delays or anything like that with him. And he says, I don't feel hunger the way you guys feel hunger. Um, so he does get 100% of the nutrition from the feeding tube, and it goes directly into his small intestine because his stomach cannot tolerate the feeds. He loves food, which is unfortunate, but and he's not picky. He loves sushi is one of his favorite things in the world. He loves pizza. But he will have one little sushi roll, and if he tries to eat a second one, he vomits. Like there's no control, and he just doesn't feel well. So for him, that's kind of his thing, and we know that this will be a lifelong thing. They've told him that he's never going to be off of a feeding tube. He cannot keep calories the way that he needs to.
Wow.
So, we keep doing what we do, and he comes in and he'll grab a little pad and say, I need a new pad or I need a new belt. And so he grabs those and does that. But yeah, it's a lifelong journey for him. It will be a forever thing. It's hard for him because since it is a J tube, he has to be hooked to a pump 21 hours a day.
Oh,
He
wow.
carries food and his pump in a backpack, and he carries them everywhere he goes. So he can unhook for 3 hours. So, like, we live on a lake, and if he wants to go swimming, he'll unhook. If he wants to go tubing or something, he can unhook for an hour or two, but 3 hours a day he can be off of the feeding. So it's hard. There's definitely a schedule that he has to work around, and there are limitations to some of the things he can do. He's only 85 pounds.
Oh, wow.
We encourage him to continue eating by mouth whenever he can, and he tries to do that every day. He tries to eat something, whether it's a granola bar or a piece of pizza or just something, because he loves food. That's really sad because he really does enjoy eating, but
Right?
he's
Oh.
limited.
Well, it sounds like he had an amazing support system and that you didn't stop so you had answers.
And we still are working. We're still trying. I mean, we've been to Mayo Clinic. We have been, Emory University is the one that did our genetic testing. We've been to U of M. We've been to Ohio State. The Best Children's Hospital here is local, and they're wonderful. So we won't stop until we have answers. But at this point, we're kind of at a standstill because there has been no new research done. But I keep up with the genetic forums and stuff like that to see what's happening and see if anybody new joins in and says, hey, I have this, and we can compare things. So we're a part of the CDO, Chromosome Disease Outreach, and Unique Chromosome Network and stuff like that. So we keep trying.
Right? Height growth to 5'1" would have been the same with or without.
My husband's only 5'6", so Joseph's genes are going to be a little bit shorter. But his brother, who does not have a feeding tube, is taller than he is. And my daughter, who also does not have a feeding tube, is taller than he is. So there were initially, sorry, some issues with calcium and stuff like that. He had osteopenia as a child because of the malnutrition and the lack of calcium. So they do think that stunted his growth a bit. Yes.
And is he the oldest, middle, or baby? Because there's three, you said.
Middle. He's the middle child. Yeah.
So that begs my question. So, since he's the middle, was there any concern or fear when you were going to have a third?
Yes. Yes, definitely. Um, but I had a great pediatrician and I had a great obstetrician, and everything that we were going through at that time, they kept coming back to, we really don't know, and it doesn't look like it's genetic. It doesn't look like it's hereditary. Um, so yes, there was always a concern for sure. Um, but quickly that did not. It became very obvious. My youngest was my biggest baby, and he had the healthiest appetite. So yeah,
Very
and still
nice.
does.
How was it from a mom's perspective setting Joseph up for school with.
School was tough. Um, but again, because I teach in the district and I knew all of the teachers well, It's a small community. I grew up with a lot of the teachers. I graduated from high school with a lot of the teachers. And they were amazing. They were wonderful. I came in to the preschool classroom and I showed his teacher how to change his tube if it ever came out, showed them what to do. They were so receptive about that. And that it never did happen, which was great because it is known to happen.
Oh,
But
wow.
everybody, they all joined in and they learned how to do it. One of the third grade teachers, two daughters who I knew really well, actually learned how to do that, and they were our babysitters.
That's incredible. I did a interview a couple weeks ago, and the topic was bullying. The guy had talked about how he had been bullied, and so I was just curious from a parent's perspective how that, if there were any nerves there. So it's nice that you had such a nice network and a community.
His group of friends, actually, his group of classmates, even if they weren't considered friends, were always very supportive. He did not ever get bullied. Um, when he went into high school, a new student had moved into our district who had not had me as a middle schooler and did not know Joseph. And he had said something to Joseph and had attempted to bully. And immediately, one of the boys stood in front of my son and said, "You have to go through me if you are going to try and get to him." And it stopped right there. Never. He has never had the bullying. He has never had anything. This community has been more amazing than you can imagine. And yes, I know there are bullies out there. I teach middle school,
Oh, yeah.
and I see it every day. But he was just so uplifted by everybody here. He has always been supported by everybody in our community.
not not having any kids, I just was super curious about how the extra complication played a role in what you felt as a mom. So thanks for sharing
It
that.
really helped after his last surgery. It really helped that when he went back to school, his team of teachers and his classmates, um, they let me come in during my plan time and they had a little assembly. And Joseph showed them all his tube, showed them how he hooked up to his pump. So they were all used to his backpack. They saw how it worked. They asked questions, and we were really transparent in everything. We answered everything we could answer. Um, and it was amazing. They were just very receptive to all of that. And I think educating kids and educating people about things that they don't know take away some of that fear. There are a lot of misconceptions about tube feeding, about people, just starving their children, or a kid will eat if he's hungry. No, he
Not if they
can't.
can't.
Won't. They don't always do that, and there are so many reasons for tube feeding that we can't even begin. But any child that has to have a tracheostomy can't swallow that. They have to have a feeding tube. Children's cancers. You just did a show on a lady who had a child with cancer. A lot of childhood cancers cause the need for a feeding tube, at least temporarily, for some of those things. Cleft palates, esophagus issues. The list goes on and on. There are over 350 known childhood diseases that cause the need for feeding tubes. And then again, my son is undiagnosed. So there are thousands that are undiagnosed.
Well, and that
So
comes
you
back
never
to your
know.
found. Well, that comes back to your foundation being so important, and you just mentioned how many different diagnoses and disease states require a feeding tube, and they're quite all over the gamut. And so again, it just speaks to how important what you're doing is in providing those pads and the belts to the people that need them is so gracious.
It's something insurance doesn't cover. Insurance will send gauze and they send tape. And a lot of kids are allergic to tape. They have sensitivities. I sent you some pictures of that were sent to me from parents that said, "This is what the tape does to my kid. They blister. It's terrible." Um, and the gauze, my son says the taking off the gauze is like ripping off a band-aid. Well, it has to be changed every day. So he's like, it's like ripping off a band-aid every day. So these are soft. They're washable, they're reusable. We've got fleece and flannel. Um, and so they can change these every day. And they're just, they make things a little more fun. So they they're functional and they're fun.
Well, and then they can make them more with their personality to the things that interest them, and
Exactly.
that's really
Yep.
neat. Well, I'll make sure that we post the pictures. I didn't know that it would make as much sense for people to see them before we had the conversation, so I'm definitely be
Oh,
posting the pictures that you sent me of the pads and the belts, and kind of really showcasing what you do is incredible, and I'm so glad to learn about it. Um,
I'm glad to tell about it.
I love bringing awareness to things that I didn't. This is another conversation that I knew nothing about. I've had so many conversations in the last month and a half with people doing these interviews. I didn't know about MRKH. I didn't know about as much about pediatric cancer. I had no idea about the Beads of Courage program that they participated in. I didn't know about the pads and belts for feeding tubes. I didn't know the process that entailed, and I definitely didn't know how many different disease states require that sort of things, that sort of treatment. And I 100% didn't know about a genetic duplication that would cause some unknown dismay.
Yeah, yeah. Now these things can be purchased on Etsy, but they're expensive, and people are trying to pay house payments, and they're trying to pay co-pays, and they're trying to pay for food for their kids, and they just they're in need. And our goal is to provide comfort and hope for tube-fed children. That's our mission. And if we can provide comfort and hope, that's what we want to do. We don't want
Well,
anybody to go without because they can't afford them.
and you said that they have to be changed every day, the little pads, right?
Mhm.
So
Yes.
I can only imagine purchasing that, especially if it was something disposable, is not a cheap undertaking.
Right. So we're on Facebook. We're listed under Joseph's Genetic Journey, and you do have to request to join. But I don't turn people down if they're obviously wanted to be part of that. So it's just a matter of going through there, and then you can access all of the pictures and the videos, and see everything that's there. And the order form is right there on that page, so anybody who needs to order can go right there and do that.
That's awesome. And I think, and that's on the Facebook page, or do you have a
Yep,
website?
it's on our Facebook page.
Perfect. And I think I did tag that link when I posted, but I'll make sure that when I post again that I do that so that people know where to go to find that. So just a couple questions about you, since we've talked a lot about your son, and really speaks to you too and your family, and we talked about some of the things that you felt, but what is something that would surprise people to know about you?
To know about me,
Mm-hmm.
um, I think it would surprise people to know that I play poker. Um, Now, people that know me know that I play poker, but at first glance, it's not something you would probably expect. Another one of my hobbies is shooting. I'm taking a friend to the range tomorrow. She's taking a CPL class and wants to get some more practice. And so, my date night with my husband, we go for dinner and we go to the range. So
I'm definitely
so that's
surprised. I would. So, is there anything else that you would like to share with us before I ask you the last question that I typically ask?
um you know what? If anybody just has an opportunity to volunteer for any nonprofit or anything in the area, in their area, do it. Helping people, knowing that you're helping people is such a reward and such a gift. And nonprofits really appreciate volunteers. We couldn't do what we do without our volunteers, and our volunteers really work a lot. So, if you get extra time, volunteer.
That's incredible. Well, again, thank you for taking the time to jump on Instagram and do this interview and share your story and share your journey. And it's such personal information. So I really appreciate it. So to close out the conversation, if there was something that you had the opportunity to just hold up a sign that would say one thing about Heidi, what would you want people to know about you? It's tough, right?
I, I guess probably just don't waste time. Like appreciate every moment because it's so precious. You never know. Um, we have actually almost buried Joseph 3 times. He has been very, very close, and just knowing that we appreciate every day with him because we've come so close to losing him so often. So we really appreciate every moment, and that's what I would say: live every moment.